Elton John is famous all over the world as a music superstar. But behind all the fancy clothes and hit songs, there's a personal story that most people didn't know about. For many years, he had feelings for a woman he loved but couldn't really be with. This truth is surprising and different from what many fans thought about him. This secret part of his life makes us think about fame, who we really are, and the hard choices he had to make to keep himself and others safe. What people will learn about this woman will surprise them, especially people who work in music. Elton John was born with the name Reginald Kenneth Dwight on March 25, 1947, in a town called Pinner in England. He came from a regular family but grew up to become one of the most important and loved musicians ever. He was really good at music from the time he was very young. When he was about 11 years old, he won a special award to study at the Royal Academy of Music, which is a very fancy music school. This was the beginning of his incredible career. When he was a teenager, he played piano in a band called Bluesology from 1962 to 1968. This was his first time playing music as a real job. In 1967, while he was in this band, he met a man named Bernie Taupin. This meeting was super important because they became one of the best songwriting teams in music history. Together, they wrote songs that people all over the world loved for many, many years. Elton made the melodies, the music part, and Bernie wrote the words, and they worked together in a way that hardly any other music partners have ever done. In 1969, Elton released his first album called Empty Sky. This album let the world hear his special voice and his piano-playing style. The next year, he released another album just called Elton John, and this one made him famous around the world. It helped him get ready for the huge success he would have in the early 1970s. During this time, he became a major pop star. He released songs that people still love today, like Rocket Man, Crocodile Rock, and Your Song. Each of these songs showed that he could make catchy music that also had deep feelings in it. His unique style, his wild performances on stage, and his amazing costumes made audiences everywhere love him. He wasn't just a musician. He became a famous icon that everyone knew about. In 1974, because he wanted to do more than just make his own music, he started a company called Rocket Record Company. He signed other singers and bands to his company while still making his own albums. This showed that he was good at business and that he cared about helping shape music in general. But Elton's career wasn't always smooth. He had some problems and controversies. In 1983, he performed at a place called Sun City in South Africa. This was a problem because the United Nations had asked artists not to perform there because of apartheid, which was a very unfair system in South Africa at the time. People criticized him, and some fans were upset. This showed how hard it can be when you're famous. Sometimes your choices about art get mixed up with politics and what's right and wrong. Even though people were watching and judging him, his personal life kept changing. On February 14, 1984, Valentine's Day, he married a woman named Renate Blauel. She was a sound engineer, which means she worked with recording music. They were married for 4 years. This was a complicated time in Elton's life. He was trying to deal with what people expected from him and his own personal struggles. Even though he really cared about her, he later said that he was living a lie during this time. This truth would eventually push him to be more honest about who he really was and what he wanted. In 1985, Elton was part of a huge concert called Live Aid at Wembley Stadium in England. This performance reminded everyone that he was one of the most exciting entertainers ever, and it showed that he wanted to use his talent to help people and good causes. But being famous was hard, and Elton had been struggling with drugs and alcohol for a long time. In 1990, he went to rehab, which is a place where people go to get help with addictions. This was a really important turning point in his life. It let him face his problems with drugs and alcohol and take back control of his career and his health. 2 years later, in 1992, he used his new energy and his caring heart to start the Elton John AIDS Foundation. He was motivated partly because he had lost close friends like Ryan White and Freddie Mercury, who died from AIDS. This organization became one of the most important groups fighting HIV and AIDS around the world. It helped with awareness, teaching people about it, prevention, stopping it from spreading, and research, finding cures. This made Elton's legacy about more than just music. It made him a humanitarian, which means someone who helps people. Throughout the 1990s, Elton John kept achieving amazing things. In 1994, he was seated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is a huge honor that shows how much he influenced music and how important his contributions were. 4 years later, in 1998, the Queen of England knighted him. This means she gave him the title Sir Elton John to recognize his work in music and charity. His personal life also had big changes. In 2005, he entered a civil partnership with a man named David Furnish. They later got married officially. This relationship brought love and stability into his life. It showed his journey toward accepting himself and living honestly. In the years after that, Elton started to move from constantly touring to thinking about his life and getting ready to finish performing. In 2018, he announced his Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. This meant he was ending decades of live performances that had made millions of fans happy all over the world. The tour had to stop from 2020 to 2022 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus disease that affected the whole world. Then it started again and finally ended with his last concert on July 8, 2023, in Stockholm, Sweden. This moment marked the end of a huge chapter in the life of a man who had defined music for generations while dealing with fame, growing as a person, and people watching and judging him. Elton talked about his life, his struggles, and his successes in his 2019 autobiography, a book about his own life called Me. In the book, he honestly talked about his past drug and alcohol problems, his relationships, his health, and the lessons he learned over decades of being a star. The book let fans and readers see the real man behind the fancy glasses. It showed both his weaknesses and his victories that shaped his journey. Adding to this story, his 2024 documentary, a film about real life, called Elton John, Never Too Late, followed his farewell tour and his personal life. It gave people a close, personal look at a performer thinking about his legacy while celebrating the experiences and people who had made his life so extraordinary. Throughout his career, Elton John achieved incredible things across all of entertainment. In 2024, he achieved EGOT status. This means he earned an Emmy for TV, a Grammy for music, an Oscar for movies, and a Tony for theater. Only a very few people in the world of entertainment have done this. These honors, along with his musical innovations and his charity work, show not just his talent but also how he stayed relevant and could adapt through decades of cultural changes. From his early days as a talented child at the Royal Academy of Music to his final farewell tour, Elton's life is a story of resilience, bouncing back from hard times, reinvention, changing and starting over, and never-ending creativity. Elton John's rise to worldwide fame was absolutely extraordinary. But behind the dazzling performances, wild costumes, and timeless hit songs was a life full of serious personal challenges and controversies. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Elton struggled with addiction. He had problems with cocaine, a dangerous drug, alcohol, and substance abuse that really hurt his health and his relationships with people. The pressure of being famous, touring all the time, and the demands of the music business only made these struggles worse. It wasn't until 1990 that he got professional help. He went to rehab and committed to being sober, not using drugs or alcohol. This decision saved his life and let him take back control of both his career and his personal well-being. He has stayed sober since then. Elton has often talked about how intense those years were. He admits that addiction was one of the hardest periods of his life, but he also sees it as a turning point that shaped his later work helping people and taking care of himself. Along with his struggles with drugs and alcohol, Elton's personal life has always gotten a lot of public attention, especially his relationships and how he came to understand his sexuality. In 1984, he married Renate Blauel, a German sound engineer. This marriage only lasted a few years. Some people think this marriage was a last try by Elton to live a straight life, to be heterosexual before fully accepting his true identity. Later, he publicly came out as gay. He has also openly talked about being bisexual in earlier years. He embraced his role as an important LGBTQ+ figure, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. His journey started bigger conversations about identity, being authentic, true to yourself, and the pressures that people in the public eye face to act the way society expects them to. While his openness and his work helping the LGBTQ+ community have inspired millions of people, the path to acceptance wasn't easy. Elton has talked about the internal conflict, struggling inside himself, the judgment from society, and the personal thinking he had to do when he tried to have heterosexual relationships early on. This shows how far me often makes private struggles become public topics that everyone talks about. Controversy also followed Elton in politics. In 1983, he performed at Sun City in South Africa. He was defying going against the United Nations cultural boycott of apartheid-era South Africa. A boycott is when people refuse to support something, and apartheid was the unfair system in South Africa. This decision got a lot of backlash, angry criticism, and started debates about what responsibilities artists have when dealing with political situations. While Elton said he just wanted to bring joy through his music, critics argued that his performance hurt international efforts to fight apartheid. This shows the complicated connections between fame, influence, and doing what's right. These controversies show how even celebrated people can face intense criticism when their actions involve global politics. They have to navigate the sometimes harsh world of public opinion while balancing their personal and professional goals. Beyond addiction and political controversies, Elton's health has also brought big challenges throughout his life. Over the years, he has had hip replacements, surgeries to replace hip joints, intensive care, stays in the hospital, and other serious medical procedures. This shows the physical toll that decades of performing, traveling, and personal hardship can take on a person. In more recent years, he revealed that he experienced severe vision loss because of an eye infection that dramatically affected his eyesight. This further shows the vulnerabilities that even the most accomplished people face. These health struggles, along with his earlier battles with addiction, paint a picture of resilience. They show how Elton has managed to keep up a demanding career while dealing with serious personal obstacles. Each medical challenge has required him to adapt, keep going, and maintain discipline and self-awareness that many people might underestimate. It shows the human fragility, weakness, behind the superstar image. Elton's charity work, especially through the Elton John AIDS Foundation, has also gotten both admiration and scrutiny, careful examination. The foundation was started in 1992 and was inspired by the deaths of friends like Ryan White and Freddie Mercury. It has played a transformative role, a role that changes things in HIV/AIDS awareness, prevention, and research worldwide. While it's widely praised for its impact, Elton has faced pressures that are typical for celebrity philanthropists, famous people who do charity work. This includes maintaining transparency, being open and honest, meeting donor expectations, and dealing with public scrutiny about how money is spent. These challenges are made worse by the expectations that come with his high-profile status, where every decision is visible to everyone. Despite the pressures, Elton's commitment to his foundation shows his dedication to causes greater than himself. It demonstrates how his personal experiences and struggles have led to a bigger mission to create positive change. His career and personal life have often crossed paths with controversy in ways that show how complex being a celebrity is. Addiction, sexual identity, controversial performances, health challenges, and charity responsibilities all show that fame is rarely a simple or straightforward journey. Elton's struggles with addiction in particular show how the music industry of the 1970s and 1980s could both enable, make possible, and endanger artists. His decision to go to rehab in 1990 wasn't only a key moment for his own life. It also served as a public example of recovery and accountability, taking responsibility. It showed that even the most successful people are vulnerable to the consequences of substance abuse. This period of rehab marked a new chapter. It allowed him to rebuild his career, advocate for health and wellness, and take on leadership in charity work and LGBTQ+ visibility. The dynamics of his relationships and identity continue to shape how the public sees him and talks about him. His marriage to Renate Blauel, while brief, remains an important reference point in stories about authenticity and societal pressures. By eventually coming out and embracing his sexual identity openly, Elton not only reclaimed his personal truth, but also offered visibility to LGBTQ+ people worldwide, encouraging greater acceptance and understanding. At the same time, the scrutiny of his earlier decisions, particularly marrying while dealing with his own identity, shows the tension between private desire and public expectation. It highlights how fame can make even ordinary human struggles into matters of global discussion. Elton's political choices, like the Sun City performance, similarly show the complex responsibilities that come with being a celebrity. Performing when he was going against the UN's cultural boycott put him at the center of ethical debates. It emphasized that artists, CDONs often carry symbolic weight beyond what they immediately intended. While fans may focus on his music and stage presence, critics and activists think about the broader implications of those decisions. This reminds us that public figures navigate a complicated balance between artistic freedom, personal values, and social accountability, being responsible to society. These instances show that controversy can come up even from acts not meant to cause problems, highlighting the delicate balance between personal expression and public responsibility. Physical health issues have also been a recurring theme in Elton's life. They reflect the connection between the demands of an extraordinary career and the human body's limits. Hip replacements, intensive care, hospital stays, and serious eye infections show that behind the spectacle of live performances, constant touring, and studio work, there are real vulnerabilities and challenges. Managing these conditions while keeping up an active public and professional life shows his resilience, discipline, and ability to adapt. These experiences add depth to his legacy, reminding fans and observers that extraordinary talent often comes paired with significant personal sacrifice. Even in his charity work, Elton has faced the pressures that come with celebrity influence. Managing the Elton John AIDS Foundation involves more than just raising money. It requires strategic oversight, careful management, transparency, and dealing with the expectations of donors and the public. Balancing these responsibilities with personal life and a demanding performance schedule shows the many-sided challenges of high-profile charity work. Despite these pressures, Elton's commitment to the foundation and broader social causes reflects his dedication to creating lasting impact. It shows that public influence carries both opportunity and responsibility. Renate Blauel was born on March 1, 1953 in Berlin, Germany, a city still recovering from the upheavals, big disturbances of the post-war era. Her life would later cross paths with one of the world's most famous musicians, leaving a subtle yet meaningful mark on Elton John's life. From a young age, Blauel showed curiosity and talent for both music and technology. These traits guided her toward a career as a sound engineer and recording studio technician in the late 1970s. At a time when the music industry was heavily male-dominated, mostly men, her technical skills, professionalism, and dedication allowed her to become a respected figure behind the scenes. She contributed to albums by famous artists like Mike Oldfield, Paul McCartney, and Marvin Gaye. This made sure that her expertise was recognized within professional circles, even if her name stayed mostly unknown to the wider public. While many of her co-workers wanted the spotlight, Blauel's focus stayed on her craft, her work. She let her work speak for itself and earned a reputation as a careful, highly capable professional who could handle the pressures of high-stakes recording environments with composure and skill. Her path changed dramatically in 1983 when she met Elton John while working on his album, Too Low for Zero. This professional collaboration soon grew into a personal relationship. It led to their marriage on February 14, 1984, in Australia, a romantic Valentine's Day ceremony that got a lot of public attention. Their marriage happened during a complicated and highly scrutinized period of Elton's life. It was a time when people were talking a lot about his sexuality, and the pressures of fame were getting more intense. For Blauel, the marriage represented a transition from her behind-the-scenes role as a studio technician into the intense and very public world of celebrity life. Though she was deeply private by nature, their marriage attracted media fascination because of the contrast between Blauel's preference for staying quiet and Elton's flamboyant public persona, his wild, showy personality. This included extravagant costumes, high-profile performances, and choices that made headlines. Their relationship, while not often discussed publicly at the time, showed both the challenges and the appeal of marrying into extraordinary fame. It highlighted the delicate balance between intimacy, closeness, and public exposure. During the years of their marriage, from 1984 to 1988, Blauel's life stayed mostly protected from the harsh light of the media. She kept a quiet presence, giving support to Elton while carefully guarding her personal boundaries. In a marriage that existed at the meeting point of global celebrity and private life, Blauel showed remarkable resilience and discretion, being careful and private. She made sure that her own life and decisions weren't overly shaped by media speculation, guessing. Her ability to handle these pressures without becoming a source of public controversy stands out as proof of her personal strength and composure, despite the challenges that come with marrying one of the world's most famous musicians. She maintained her autonomy, independence. She quietly influenced Elton's personal stability while protecting her own privacy. Their marriage ultimately ended in divorce in 1988. This separation reflected both the personal and professional changes taking place in their lives. For Elton, it was a step toward publicly embracing his sexual identity. For Blauel, it marked a conscious decision to pull back from the spotlight and preserve her own private existence. This showed a shared, if different, journey toward authenticity and self-determination, deciding for yourself. Following the divorce, Blauel made the deliberate choice to withdraw from public life. She prioritized privacy and personal reinvention over public attention or fame. Unlike many people who might have stayed in the media's eye because of their connection to a global superstar, she instead chose a quiet life removed from the public sphere. This retreat was more than a personal preference. It was a strategic decision to maintain control over her own narrative, story. She wanted to live a life defined by her own choices rather than media speculation. By choosing discretion, Blauel emphasized the importance of autonomy. She showed how a person can assert personal boundaries even after being part of one of the most watched marriages of the 1980s music world. Her withdrawal shows a commitment to privacy, highlighting the challenges faced by those next to celebrity and the measures required to protect personal identity in a context that often seeks to consume it. In 2001, Blauel took further steps to create a clear separation from her past by legally changing her name through deed poll, a legal way to change your name. This action was a significant moment of personal reinvention. It enabled her to create a private identity independent of her history with Elton John. By establishing this legal and symbolic distance, she reinforced her long-standing preference for discretion and personal autonomy. This decision reflects not only a desire to maintain privacy, but also an assertion of control over her life narrative. She made sure that her identity was defined on her own terms rather than by public curiosity or media framing. The name change marked a deliberate reassertion of agency, taking control, and showed Blauel's resilience. It showed that she could navigate the complexities of fame-adjacent relationships while keeping a sense of self, privacy, and dignity. Decades after their divorce, legal matters concerning their marriage came up briefly again. This led to a settlement in October 2020. In this agreement, both Blauel and Elton John committed not to make further public comments about each other or their marriage. This reinforced their shared desire for privacy and closure. The settlement shows the lasting importance of boundaries for people who have lived part of their lives in the public eye, even long after the relationship itself has ended. It reflects a mutual understanding of the need for discretion. It shows that personal respect and integrity can coexist with past public exposure. By choosing to limit commentary and maintain confidentiality, both Blauel and Elton signaled a commitment to controlling how their shared history is discussed and remembered, prioritizing dignity over sensationalism, making things dramatic to get attention. Renate Blauel's legal battles and mental struggles became the center of renewed public attention decades after her brief marriage to Elton John. This showed the complex challenges faced by those who cross paths with fame yet seek personal autonomy. One of the most significant issues involved privacy and legal disputes coming from her marriage. Blauel claimed that Elton John repeatedly violated the terms of their 1988 divorce agreement. The agreement had been carefully designed to protect both parties from public scrutiny and included a clause, a specific part, preventing either of them from publicly discussing details of their marriage. For Blauel, this violation wasn't a small matter. It represented a breach of trust and an intrusion into the private life she had carefully built over the years. Seeking to restore control over her personal narrative, she started legal action. She requested an injunction to block future editions or adaptations of Elton John's book and the film Rocketman. In addition to protecting her privacy, she sought damages of approximately £3 million, British money, for psychological distress caused by renewed public exposure. This emphasized the deep impact that public attention can have on a person's mental and emotional well-being. In taking these legal steps, Blauel underscored her long-standing commitment to privacy and self-preservation. Following the divorce, she had changed her name and adopted a more private life in order to shed her identity as Elton John's former wife. This signaled her determination to live independently of the celebrity with whom she had once been associated. This act of personal reinvention wasn't merely symbolic. It was a real step to reclaim autonomy and create a life defined by personal choice rather than media intrusion. The settlement that followed ultimately included a mutual commitment by both Blauel and Elton John not to make further public commentary on each other. This reinforced the principles of discretion and mutual respect that had been originally intended in their divorce agreement. This legal resolution represented both closure and an acknowledgement of the long-term consequences that fame-adjacent relationships can have on individuals seeking private lives. It highlighted the delicate balance between public interest and personal boundaries. Blauel's experiences also shed light on the profound mental health struggles that can go along with high-profile relationships, particularly when privacy is repeatedly challenged. Allegedly, according to reports, she attempted suicide just 3 days into her honeymoon after Elton reportedly told her that the marriage was not working. This moment shows the intense emotional strain she endured even during the earliest stages of their union. Beyond this, she experienced chronic anxiety and panic attacks throughout their marriage, challenges that were made worse by the pressures of being connected to a world-famous musician. The marriage, while legally brief, happened during a period of intense personal stress. During this time, Blauel had to deal with both her own emotional well-being and the expectations of a global public eager to look closely at the private lives of its celebrities. These experiences highlight the often overlooked human consequences of fame. They show how public fascination and personal vulnerability can meet with sometimes devastating effects. The comeback of public scrutiny decades later, particularly following Elton John's memoir and the release of Rocketman, reportedly triggered a mental health relapse for Blauel. This included nightmares, agoraphobia, fear of going outside or being in public places, anxiety, and depression. Such a relapse demonstrates the lasting impact that past events can have when they're repeatedly looked at again in the public sphere. It shows that even those who try to maintain distance from media attention are not immune to its effects. Blauel's experience is an example of the psychological toll that high-profile relationships can take, particularly when one party keeps global visibility and the other has chosen to live in relative anonymity, being unknown. Her struggles reflect the reality that mental health challenges can be long-lasting and are often made worse by external pressures, including renewed public scrutiny and media portrayals that revisit sensitive personal histories without consent. Representation in media emerged as another significant source of tension for Blauel. She alleged that the film, Rocketman, misrepresented her marriage, portraying the relationship as cold or distant in ways that she argued were inaccurate. Her concern wasn't simply about public perception, but about faithfulness to the truth of her lived experience. She claimed that she had not been consulted before the film's production or the inclusion of their marriage. This was a situation she argued violated the terms of their divorce confidentiality agreement. For Blauel, such portrayals were deeply troubling because they revisited her private life without consent, undermining the autonomy and control she had carefully maintained since the 1980s. This dispute shows the challenges that come up when artistic license, creative freedom, intersects with real-life events, particularly when those events involve people who have intentionally stepped away from public attention. It illustrates the tension between creative storytelling and ethical responsibility, especially when the subject of such storytelling has legally protected privacy rights. Renate Blauel holds a unique and deeply meaningful place in Elton John's life. She represents a love he cherished, but ultimately could not fully realize because of his sexuality. Their relationship, which led to a marriage in Sydney in 1984, is often remembered not only for its romantic beginning, but also for the deep personal and emotional complexities that followed. At the time, Elton was in a state of denial about his sexuality, a reality that would deeply shape their union and the years after. Despite the love and admiration he felt for Blauel, Elton later admitted that marrying her while not fully acknowledging his own identity caused pain and regret for both of them. In his reflections, he has spoken honestly about the hurt he caused in that first marriage. He said that he wanted nothing more than to be a good husband but could not be true to himself. This resulted in sadness for Blauel and a deep sense of guilt for himself. This acknowledgement gives a rare look into the inner struggles faced by people dealing with personal identity under the intense spotlight of public life. It highlights how personal authenticity and what society expects can collide in deep ways. The marriage between Elton John and Renate Blauel was marked by both affection and tension, largely because it existed in the context of personal and societal pressures surrounding sexuality. The couple's wedding, a Valentine's Day ceremony in Sydney, was a romantic moment that captured public attention and temporarily covered up the underlying personal challenges Elton was facing. While the event might have appeared celebratory from the outside, behind the scenes, it reflected the tension of a union in which one partner was not yet able to live openly in alignment with their true self. For Blauel, the marriage represented a sudden shift from a private professional life as a sound engineer to being the spouse of an internationally recognized musician, a transition that required navigating both public curiosity and the complexities of an emotionally conflicted partner. For Elton, it was a period of attempting to reconcile, make peace between, his affection for Blauel with the reality of his sexual identity, a process that would ultimately lead to both personal insight and a painful, necessary conclusion to their union. In 1988, after 4 years of marriage, Elton John and Renate Blauel divorced. This outcome, while painful, allowed both individuals to pursue lives more consistent with their authentic selves. Elton openly confirmed that he was gay, reflecting on the significance of honesty and courage in relationships. In his words, "To be worthy of someone's love, you have to be brave enough and clear-eyed enough to be honest with yourself and your partner." In speaking about his past, Elton John has consistently expressed admiration and love for Blauel, emphasizing that the marriage was not without deep emotional significance. He described her as a wonderful woman for whom I have so much love and admiration, highlighting the genuine affection that existed between them. Beyond reflecting on personal history, Elton John has also used his platform to advocate for broader social issues, particularly marriage equality. He has emphasized the importance of love and acceptance for all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation. Ahead of his tour in Australia, He publicly supported marriage equality and spoke with pride about his long-term relationship with David Furnish. He noted that their marriage has been embraced and accepted globally. In his statements, he celebrated the freedom to be fully authentic with a partner. He remarked that he met Furnish almost 24 years ago, the person with whom he could be fully himself.